Hey guys, Malik from trackfunnels.com, and today I've got very beautiful music in the background and a very beautiful chart on my screen. And I'm going to be talking about the Treemaps in acquisition report of your Google Analytics account. Now, if you're stuck with your marketing and do not know what to do next, at the end of this video, you'll feel a lot more confident, and I hope you will walk away with a clear set of actions that you can go ahead and implement right away. You'll be able to do that for your landing pages, ads, and channel performances. So let's get started. You can find this chart is if you go to the acquisition here and click under all traffics, Treemaps. Right, so we have the Treemaps chart here. And what Treemap chart shows you is that it gives you a bird's eye view of your entire account in terms of which channels are performing, which channels are not performing, which channels are performing better than the others. One thing that you have to note is that this gives you an aggregated data, so it's not specific data. For specific data, you'll have to go into individual reports and then check for each data point. But the reason this chart is so useful is because, first of all, it's visual. And when something is visual, then we are able to comprehend it in a better way than if it was in a table where you have to go through multiple rows and multiple columns to understand what's going on there. The second thing is that it compares all your channels, the performance of all your channels in a single snapshot. So just by looking at this chart, you are able to see which channels are your better performing channels and which channels are performing poorly. And based on this, you can actually set benchmarks for your different channels. So if a channel is not performing well and the channel that's performing the best will set the benchmark for your other channels. So if there's a channel that's not performing well, you see here, then you can go in and optimize that channel's performance based on the benchmark that you had set with your best performing channel. Now, how do you use this? How do you read this chart? So there are three things that you have to keep in mind. First is the dimension, which is if you scroll down a little bit, then you'll see this table. When you go to this chart, then by default you are given the channel grouping as the selection. So what you see here is that this chart is referring to the performance of different channels, but you can also change this, and we'll see in a minute how do we change this into a specific dimension that you would like to see. The second thing is that you have to know there is a primary metric and then there is a secondary metric. So the difference between these two is that if you have ever used Treemaps chart, then you know that these are nested rectangles coded by colors. So the primary metric refers to the size of the rectangle. The bigger the size, the more value it has. So this is a volume metric. The secondary metric is signified by the color of that rectangle. So if you're looking at organic search, we see that this is the largest rectangle here, more than direct, and it is greener in color, and this is the scale right here will show you which one refers to what. So if it's low, then it turns dark red, but if it's high, then it turns dark green. So you have to be able to select the primary metric that you are trying to compare with the secondary metric in this channel. In the Treemap. So that's one of the most important things. So how do we read this data? The first thing that you will do to read this data is to know what is it that you want to look at. So for example, from a very generic standpoint, if you are running an e-commerce website, or if you have any sort of goals that you've set up in your analytics account, then what you would want to see is how many sessions were generated by each channel, and then what's the difference between the conversion rates. So right now I'm looking at the number of sessions and the e-commerce conversion rate. The sessions are being displayed by a rectangle, the size of the rectangle, as I said before, and the e-commerce conversion rate can be understood by these colors that we have here. So what do we see in this particular chart? What I see here is that organic search brought in the most sessions. However, the e-commerce conversion rate is still in green, but not very dark green. So if you hover your mouse over this small chat icon, then you'd see the exact values of both. So you have 4,727 sessions that got generated with a 0.25% e-commerce conversion rate. But the thing that you want to look at first is which one is your highest conversion rate, for example. So, and I see here just with the colors, I can see that this is the darkest color, and these two basically are the darkest ones. So I wanted to look at the conversion rate here, which is 0.30%, and here it's 0.33%. So basically this is the darkest one and this is less dark. So my other channel where my traffic is coming from, which is probably not correctly tagged, and that's why they're all being grouped together, and the other have the highest conversion rate. Okay, so for 1 second we'll just leave this out because it doesn't, because we have to go deeper into this one to understand which channels are sending this kind of traffic that is not tagged. But for now, what I know is that my paid search has a 0.30 conversion rate, which is the highest of all the channels, right? And then I have direct, which is in red, but not as red as referrals, because from referrals I see that it's 0% conversion rate. So I'm getting nothing from referrals, but there is a lot of traffic that's coming through in the referrals, right? So what I see here is that my paid search is performing really well. My organic search is performing also well. And my direct search is not performing so well. So all the reds that I have, I can basically start to optimize them or create a strategy around how to optimize them. The other thing, for those who do not have an e-commerce website, can use the other secondary metric called goal conversion rate. So if you click on goal conversion rate, this will all change. And as you can see that the referrals now are bringing in more goal conversions for me than anything else. And this is 23.19 and this is 22 points. So now referrals have gone almost at par with paid search, and others, which was green earlier, has now turned red. Similarly, direct, which was red earlier, has now turned green because my goals, I'm getting more goals done from these traffic channels than I'm getting e-commerce conversions from these channels. So that's a very important insight. But now if I want to go and check under referrals, what is it that's working under referrals, then I can click here. And now I see that my primary metric is still sessions, my secondary metric is still goal conversion rate, but what changed? So under referrals, what I have are these now: mail, analytics, which websites are referring me. So from here I can see which are more useful websites for me and which are not as useful as the others. Now, one of the things that you have to note here is that all of this coloring is basically relative. So it doesn't mean that if it's dark green in color, then it's performing really well. What it just means is that if it's dark green in color, then it's performing better than what you have here, like the other rectangles that you have. Moreover, there is another limitation to Treemaps report, is that it can only display 16 squares. So 15 would have their individual names or dimension, but the last one, the 16th one, is the rest of the dimensions grouped together and it's called others. So the other thing that you can do actually is look at your landing page. So if I have those sources selected earlier, but now I want to check that from those sources which landing pages are performing well, then I just click here in the primary dimension to landing page and see these are my landing pages and which ones of those are performing the best. And I see that the signin.html is basically the one that has a high goal conversion rate, 42%. Now this may not be a good way to look at data, because one of my conversions could be for people to log in. And if I have a website where people can make a purchase only after they log in, then definitely this page is going to have the highest conversion rate. So what I will look at when I'm looking at the landing pages as the dimension is that I want to see engagement. And before I actually see engagement, let me go back, and I'd like to see engagement from my social channels actually, not from the others, because for the others, it's the social channel that brings in people into our traffic, and most of us are actually promoting a lot on social channels these days. So which means that I would like to have more engagement from traffic that's coming from the social channels. So what I'll do is I have sessions as my primary metric now, and the secondary metric that I'd like to have would be either maybe average session duration, how long a session lasts from these channels, or I would like to see pages per session, how many people are viewing the pages every session, or how many pages are being viewed every session. So if I click on this here, for example, then I see that, okay, YouTube is bringing me the most sessions, and also they have a high pages per session. If someone comes from YouTube, it's likely that they will look at more pages on my website. But if someone is coming at from Twitter, then they are not having high pages per session, so in comparison to YouTube. But I also have this very dark green color here, which I see is LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is bringing me a lot actually. So what I know from this is that the best performing channel is LinkedIn out of all these, but they do not have a lot of traffic. So what I can do now is that instead of bringing people from Twitter, maybe I could, transfer some of my budget from Twitter to LinkedIn, because I see that there's a higher engagement from LinkedIn. So that's how you can optimize your landing pages, your social network. Now, if I go into, let's say YouTube, let's say Twitter, because Twitter, what I see is I have 3 pages per session from Twitter, and I have 81 sessions. So I'll click here and see which pages are actually bringing me better pages per session. So what I see here is a gray area, gray box, which means that there is no further drill down available for Twitter, because Twitter is a channel, right? So what I'll do is I'll go back, and I would want to look at the landing pages now instead of the social networks. So what you have to understand is that you can only click on a rectangle if there is a drill down available. Now, if I clicked on Twitter, then there's nothing that is a subset of Twitter in a social network, right? So that's why you don't see anything. But if I go to my landing pages here, I can see which landing pages are performing better in terms of having more engagement. So what I see is that this landing page that I have, which is from YouTube brand, has 33 pages per session. This is amazing. But if I look at the one that has the highest traffic, it's still red, and what I see is that it just has 4 pages per session. So what I would want to do is, I know that this page is bringing me more engagement, so I would want to use this page in my paid promotions on Twitter, probably because Twitter has low pages per session. So I could just use this on my page promotions, and similarly I can try to optimize the other ones that I have. So that's basically how you look at Treemaps. There are several limitations, like I said, of which one of the limitations is that you only have 16 rectangles here, and the other limitation is that right now we do not have the segmentation feature available for Treemaps, so we can't really segment our traffic. The second thing, the most important one that I feel should be there, is the individual goals. So what you see here is that you have goal conversion rate, but it is an aggregated conversion rate of individual goals that you have set up there. So one of the workaround is that you create a new view, and in that view just add one conversion there, and then you'll have the value of that conversion rate here, because it aggregates all the conversion rates for now. So those are the two big limitations. There are a couple of others, but I think that is specific to each business. And I would say that this should be one of the reports that you should definitely go to and check out how your channels are performing. And based on this, you can, like we saw in this video, you can optimize your poorly performing channels, see how you can transfer budgets from one to the other. And secondly, you can also optimize your landing page. Look at which landing pages are performing better, that are causing more engagement for your audiences, and then use that landing page for your different paid promotions. And yes, one more important limitation is that what you see here, which is similar to what you see in any other acquisition traffic reports or source medium report, is that these reports don't give you the entire picture. Because if I have conversion rate selected here, for example, and I look at social, and I see that in this social there is different conversion rate, this is not the complete picture, because this only gives you the last click attribution. So in order for you to see what is the how much YouTube is assisting, or how much Google Groups is assisting, or Facebook is assisting in total conversions, you have to go to the multi-channel attribution report. So that's like one of the last limitations that I would say is more important to keep in mind. So to recap, Treemaps give you a bird's eye view of aggregated data to check performance of your different channels that can help you in optimizing your landing pages, optimizing the performance of different channels. Also find various engagement rates from different channels or on different landing pages. So I hope you guys found this useful, and if you have any questions, do not forget to add it into the comments below. Thanks a lot and have a nice weekend.